Hello, everyone. So we are now on the hour. I can see that people are still joining. So I think we might wait a couple of minutes more before we start. Meanwhile, I'll introduce myself. I'm Sofia Alroth with the Waves and GPS programs at the World Bank. And just to let you know that if you have technical issues, then please post in the chat and we will read and try to help you. If you post in the Q&A, this will be part of the discussion and the questions posed at the end of the webinar. So just that you are all aware that these are two different functions. There's a Q&A and there's the chat box. If you're on a laptop, you will find both those controls at the bottom bar. If you're on a phone, the Q&A will show up at the top of your phone. There's a small white square that you can find this. Shane, I don't know if you're looking. I saw that somebody raised a hand, but since I'm sharing my screen, it's a little bit tricky for me to check.
Hi, Sophia. No, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just a mistake, right? Okay, let's see where we are at. So we are now 43 participants. I think that we should get started. We have a very interesting agenda for today. So just to check, Africa, are you with us? And I don't mean the continent.
I'm here. I'm good.
Excellent. Thank you. So let me introduce to you our chair for today's webinar, Africa Olojoba, who is the practice manager for the East and Southern Africa region with the World Bank within the Environment, Natural Resources and Blue Economy Global Practice. So over to you, Africa, to start off our meeting.
Thank you very much, Sophia. In as much as I don't want to compete with the continent, for the purpose of this webinar, I will assume the name of my father. My father's name is Samuel. After the webinar, I go back to my real name, Africa. I want to first greet good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants. And I want to welcome you to the 11th webinar in the African Natural Capital Accounting Community of Practice. It's nice to see that we'll have lots of participants here, and it's good. This is my first webinar, and I'm really excited to be among you, especially to learn from the experience of Botswana that has been engaged for the last 10 years. As you are aware, Botswana was one of the pilot waves countries, and after the end of wave, they still continue churning NCA data to assist government in policy making. I want to congratulate Botswana for their commitment in mainstreaming NCA data into policy making and for their willingness to share their experience with us today. We hear from 3 officials from Botswana who have been instrumental in running the NCA program. After their brief presentation, there will be time for questions and comments from the audience. I want to emphasize that, please, we also need to hear comments and experience from other participants from other countries once we have the opportunity. I will now leave the floor to our facilitator, Peter, but I'll come back again to give my closing remark. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sophia.
Thank you so much, Africa. And Peter, welcome. Let me introduce to you, I think you all know him, Peter Katanisa. He's the coordinator for the Africa NCA Community of Practice. Peter, please.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I'm glad to be here, and thank you so much, our chair, Mr. Samuel. We are glad to have you here, and we hope that we will stay with you in the next round of webinars that we have every month. So, Sophia, if we go to some of the housekeeping rules so that we can all follow up on this very exciting webinar, knowing what not to do and what to do and how to navigate and be able to participate and contribute. So dear participants, that you have to know that today we are using Zoom. Normally we use WebEx. So there's a number of some of the icons that you have to know for you to be able to communicate efficiently with all the rest of the participants. So call in from the noise-free location. Ensure that you are muted when not speaking. Please kindly request you, or when you're joining, please make sure that you're muted if you're not speaking. Please post questions in the Q&A section, as Sophia mentioned, we have the Q&A question, box, and then we have the chat box. So chat box is, for example, if you want to share information or if you want to thank participants or presenters and all that, but then specific key questions should be put into the Q&A, which will be later on be answered or try to give responses to all those the Q&A. So after the presentations. So we will run a very tight program, and we will reserve Q&A section in terms of responses at the end of the presentations. For technical issues, please again use the chat box. If you are having technical issues, please go to that chat box. If we are joining by phone, please click on join with a personal link name and add your name. Sign in with your full name. This way, we can all identify the person speaking. So thank you so much. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to all NCA community members, but also it will be posted on the website. And for those who are lucky enough to be among the few who are on the WhatsApp group for the community of practice, we will be able to post the same information within the WhatsApp group. But again, we want to communicate to you that we will very soon try to expand to make sure that we have a lot of pending members who want to join the social media WhatsApp group, but we will communicate to you officially another platform that we can use, which has larger numbers that we can use, because for the moment we have reached the complete accepted number for the WhatsApp group. So we'll have to look for another app and we will communicate to you to make sure that all members have that chance to join and discuss on a daily basis on how they are implementing NCA within their respective countries. So if you allow me, Sophia, we can now go into the program or the agenda of the day. So today we have a very exciting webinar, which is being coordinated and managed by the Botswana team. We are very excited that we have today 3 presenters, and I will try to quickly tell you who they are and welcome them. And then we'll run through the agenda quickly, and then we start our webinar. So the first presenter who will present on water count is Mr. Ogopotse Blue Pule, Principal Water Resource Engineer in the Department of Water and Sanitation within the Ministry of Lands, Water and Sanitation Services in Botswana. Mr. Pule is the team leader for the water accounts and has presented Botswana in various international fora to disseminate water accounts development in the country. Welcome, Mr. Pule. The second presenter is Miss Anne Diepego. She's the Principal Energy Officer within the Department of Statistics, Head of Statistics Section at the Department of Energy, Ministry of Mineral Resources, Green Technology, and Energy Security. Miss Diepego has been with the section since September 2016, facilitating the construction of the accounts, with more emphasis on analysis and the production of energy accounts technical reports. Welcome, Ms. Anne. And then our next presenter, who will be the final presenter for today, is Mr. Edwin Itekeng. Miss Edwin, I think Mr. Edwin, I would like to say that Mr. Edwin is currently was nominated and appointed as the chairman of the Africa Community of Practice Steering Committee. So we are pleased that we have Mr. Edwin again joining us today. Mr. Edwin is the chief economist, macroeconomic policy section within the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development within Botswana. Mr. Edwin is the country focal point for UNSEA and the United Nations Regional Commissions on SEA, the Strategic System of Environmental Economic Accounting Related Matters. He heads the WEVS unit, the Wealth Accounting and Evaluation of Ecosystem unit, also now which has been translated into the Global Program on Sustainability, which is responsible for coordinating implementation of NCA in the country by working with ministries and agencies responsible for compiling CR-related or NCA-related information on sustainable use of the country's key natural resources. Mr. Edwin was recently elected, as I mentioned, as chair of the steering committee for the Africa NCA Committee of Practice. Welcome, Mr. Edwin. So quickly to run through the agenda, we've heard about, from Mr. Samuel Olojoba, Africa, who gave us the welcome remarks. I'm your facilitator, Peter. The first presenter will focus on trends of the results for the water account for Botswana, summary of policy messages, and linking to ongoing water strategies. And then also he'll touch on how NCA water account is supporting Botswana in terms of implementing and reporting on SDG 6 on water resource management applications within Botswana. Mr. Pule, you have 12 minutes. And if you allow me, Sophia, please, and Mr. Pule, please, the floor is yours. Go ahead and give us your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks for the introduction. I will share our journey on the water accounts as Botswana. I think you'll move the screen that side for me. These slides. Okay, next slide, please. That is the layout of the presentation. I'll give the background and the trend of results, but just also laying the foundation to what led to those results. A summary of policy messages, a linkage to ongoing water sector strategies, the application of the accounts for SDG 6, and the concluding statement. Next slide, please. As a background, why the water accounts? Botswana is a semi-arid country. Our water supply is highly variable, both in space and in time. So it's very much critical that we know and try to account for every drop within the country. The accounts are geared towards helping us in understanding how water is being used and how this use is changing over time. We also want to predict future water demands, depending on how each sector is consuming water. And we also look at the impacts of water use. Is the quality varying over time? What are the impacts on the economy? How is the allocation of water affecting development? Then also policy relevance was very critical when we started the accounts. Our main development item is the NDP. Currently we are on NDP 11, and we also have an overarching document for the country, which is the National Vision 2036. And also another issue on policy relevance is the water resource management and the resource allocation, because of course the needs are growing and the competition is growing for this scarce resource. And also for planning, how do we allocate water to those sectors of the economy? How do we prioritize? How do we assess the use of water? Next slide, please. As a background, from the beginning, the main aim for us was always to make sure that this process is institutionalized, because this was not the first time the country did the water accounts. They were done some time back in the past, but as a project. But this time the plan was to make sure that we do it and make sure it becomes an annual activity, not just a one-off project. So this started way back in May 2012 from the Botswana Economic Advisory Council, where it prioritized the production of the water accounts, mainly due to the pressing situation at that time of water shortage, due to the low rainfalls and the distribution of the available resource. The journey saw us starting this process with technical assistance from the Center for Applied Research, commonly called CAR. So we started this process in 2012 with preliminary account construction and analysis. From that stage, then there was elaboration of the accounts and the plans for institutionalizing of the water accounts, where a deliberate plan was laid in place. How can we institutionalize this process to make sure it's sustainable and it doesn't end once the funding from World Bank wave stops? Then from 2013 to 2016, there was an annual process of updating and expanding of the accounts, and also to try and make sure that the results influence or are reflected in the National Development Plan 2011, NDP 11. And then from beyond June 2016, that's when now there was a big call on us to make sure that now there's no longer support from World Bank Waves. There's no longer the hands-on assistance by the Consultant Center for Applied Research. So now it's up to us as a sector to make sure we continue this process. So there was this full institutionalization within the Department of Water and Sanitation with annual production of these SEA-styled water accounts. Next slide, please. What are the tangible products we have so far through our water accounts? Currently, we have been able to produce a total of 6 SEA-styled water accounting reports, which cover the period from 2010 until the latest report, which covers up to 2019. We have also been able to produce a long-term time series on the water consumption. This one dates beyond the SEA-styled reporting. It dates all the way back to 1990. And we keep updating this trend to see how consumption is changing over time, also looking at the different sectors. We've been able to produce 5 policy briefs so far, which usually just select a topic of interest in that year, and then you use the available data to produce a policy brief on that. We have been able to publish 3 papers covering different topics. One of those papers included a paper on wildlife water use. There was a paper on agriculture, and a general paper on developing of water accounts as an economic accounting tool for the country. We also yearly do numerous case studies to address emerging challenges. These case studies are usually done with the approval of the technical working group, and the topic always focus on a challenging issue on that year. We've done on water rationing risks, where we focus on key sectors which were affected by the major rationing which happened in 2015 when there was a big drought in the country. We've done a case study on households which are not connected to the potable water network. And we've also done a case study on soil moisture to try and gauge how much water is actually being used for rain-fed agriculture. Annually, we do agricultural surveys to try and prove the available data, especially on irrigation and livestock water use. Next slide, please. This one is just a sample of the results from 2015-2016. What is worth highlighting in us sustaining this process is the benefit we've had from training and capacity building. We've benefited from the hands-on training we got from the Consultant Center for Applied Research, We've also had missions which focused on training specifically on water accounts from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. We've also benefited from support from Australian National University. We've also benefited from data quality assessments and checks which were done by the Netherlands Statistics. So those activities really help us to try and see how we are, and also to give credibility to the data we produce. So this one is just the physical supply and use diagram for the country, just to show the movement of water from the environment into the economy and the returns from the economy into the environment. Ideally, once we are where we desire to be, all those arrows should have numbers. Currently, we have numbers in most of them, but not in all those arrows. But we are moving towards a time when we'll be able to have a number to every arrow. Next slide, please. This one is also just a sample of the results from 2016, 2017. And we also, as we improve over the years, our schematics also improve, because the accounts, we always try to make sure we share them with management and policymakers. And it's always easy to communicate when we have a schematic layout like the one we have here, where a policymaker can quickly see that, oh, agriculture is using this much water, mining is using this much water. This is how much water we are getting from treated effluent. So we thought it was worth sharing this diagram. Next one, please. This one is just a sample of our SEA table, an abridged SEA table for 2018-2019, which are the latest results, which just got accepted by the technical working group about 2 weeks back. From here now, this will have to go to the project steering committee, which Mr. Iseking will talk a little bit on. Next one, please. Summary of policy messages. Here, we just want to share on the main findings we've had from our accounts, which had some policy relevance. One of the findings from the accounts was to optimize agricultural data, especially on how much water is going towards rain-fed agriculture and how much water is going towards irrigation. And from the findings here, the main policy application and relevance was that the update to National Water Master Plan now reflects the water required for food security. Like that is, we now have a much clearer picture on how much the country needs per hectare of water if we are to improve and increase our irrigation. And also the policy has a dedicated chapter which focuses on water for agriculture, because it is the major use of water and is really needed on the socio-economic front and also for food security. We've done wildlife water use estimates, and this gave policy advice to say, with the ongoing water abstraction and pricing strategy, let's reflect wildlife water needs within the ecological water requirements. The accounts also from early on, they found that the utilization of treated effluent is very low. We are currently utilizing about 2 million cubic meters of effluent, of treated effluent, when the estimated treated effluent in the country is about 40 million cubic meters. So this was prioritized as an additional source of water towards meeting current and future demands of water. One of the findings was also on high per capita consumption, especially within the greater Gaborone area. Gaborone is our capital city, and that's where most of the population resides. We had about more than 200 liters per person per day within Gaborone. So as a water conservation and demand management strategy, one of the issues picked up or currently being pursued is to make sure we reduce this per capita water use as a demand management strategy at household level. Next slide, please. Linkage to ongoing strategies. One of the things which we found really important to make sure we sustain the process was to make sure that we do our accounts activities with very close linkage or synergy to what is exactly happening, what is already happening within the department, and also to make sure that the accounts also drive activities and milestones within the Department of Water and Sanitation. So there's a study on raw water abstraction and pricing strategy, which was actually one of the things highlighted from the first policy briefs, that there's a need to make sure there's a clear strategy on water abstraction and pricing in Botswana. This was, of course, from the accounts. So the accounts, they provide water use efficiency data. They also provide actually how much water is being abstracted by self-providers of water. There is also a study and a project on demarcation of catchment management areas. The accounts have done a case study on regionalization of the accounts. And also from our IWRM plan, also this always being highlighted that there is a need to manage water at the lowest level within our community to make sure the people are engaged and they have full ownership on conserving the water, on protecting the catchment. There is also our study on water conservation and demand management as a policy and strategy document for the country. The per capita water use and water allocation efficiency data from the accounts were influential in making sure that this document focuses on what is really needed to conserve water within the country. There is now a very big study on the review of water-related legislation. And here also the linkage or influence from the accounts is on the need to flatten the curve on operational cost by the water service provider, because this review will also look at setting up an independent water regulator. So this regulator will ensure that the cost of water is a true reflection of what is needed and not a transfer of costs or low operational efficiency by the service provider. Next slide, please. The SDG 6 applications. As a department, we are responsible for monitoring and reporting on SDG 6. That is to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. The water accounts, they provide data directly which addresses the target 6.4 for the two indicators which are under 6.4. There's indicator 6.4.1, which looks at change in water use efficiency over time. There's 6.4.2, which looks at level of water stress, that is freshwater withdrawals, as a proportion of available freshwater resources. The water accounts also are being listed as an item that is used for management and support, and also follow up for implementation of integrated water resource management plan. The plan for Botswana was developed in 2013, and that is reported under SDG 6.5.1. With respect to SDG 6.4, the accounts, they provide the data on water use efficiency. If you are familiar with 6.4, you'll know that this looks at actual water use for agriculture and the return on investment. That is how much money do you get from agriculture. The accounts also provide data on total freshwater withdrawals and also total renewable water resources within the country. Of course, this is submitted on an annual basis, with the custodian agency for 6.4 being Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. Next slide, please. Okay, now just to conclude, This is the statement which was made in 2016 by our DPS, Dr. Oba King, and we felt is very relevant to give it as a concluding statement, because the words were said in 2016, but they are really still applicable now. That is the main objective of the water accounting process, is to generate more credible information on natural capital accounting for informed planning and policy decision making. Because data is important, but it has to be credible. It has to be data you can trust. So the peer review process which exists within the natural capital accounting within the country, they really give robust checks and make sure that the data we give out is as accurate as possible. So the accounts we deemed as a critical tool to assist and guide on issues of water allocation, because the water accounts, one of the stakeholders which we work very closely with is the Water Apportionment Board. This is the board which is responsible for allocating of water rights within the country. We monitor compliance to safe fields within our dams, within our well fields. How much are we abstracting? Is this complying with the set safe fields? What does this imply for the future? Also, to create linkages with sustainable development goals, as I've just shared in the previous slide, where the accounts are influencing SDG 6.4 and also SDG 6.5.1. With this closing statement, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pule. Thank you for that very vast and broad, very exciting experience of Botswana in terms of developing the water account for Botswana. We've seen from right away from the policy influence to planning to IWRM management within the country, to institutional and legal framework review and updating the National Water Resource Master Plan for Botswana, and generating almost a 10-year time series data on water resources and water account data. This is very exciting. I think for matters of managing time, we thank you so much, and I would like highly to encourage members to post your questions and comments within the Q&A and also within the chat box, continue the discussions. But also, Mr. Pule, if you have any reports that you think that are very relevant to what you have shared, please post them in the chat box so that people later on can reference them and be able maybe to go dive deep into them and be able to study and emulate some of wonderful work that has been done within the sector of water accounting in Botswana. So our next presenter, and I highly again want to kindly request that presenters please stick within the 12 minutes. So we've lost some minutes, but I think we will gain them in the next presenters. So now I want to welcome.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Peter.
Yes,
I know we said we would take all questions at the end, but I think there are some questions that are very specific to this presentation.
Okay.
So maybe we can just take those right now.
Okay, let's do that.
So
go ahead, Sophia.
Yeah, I think some of them are a bit general, but those that are specific on water. The first one is from Jaap Arntzen from CAR. He says, great work and presentation. And what is the trend in NRW, which is very important for policies? I will read up 2 questions, Pule, and then you can answer them, and then I'll take 2 more. So the next one is, how efficient is the water distribution system in Gaborone? How are leaks and such things managed? Pule, over to you.
Oh, thank you for that. On the non-revenue water, on average at the national level, it's usually just around 28%, but this of course varies per management center. But it's been for the last 10 years, it's been just ranging between 25% and 28% as a national average for non-revenue water. But with the next question, which is specific to Gaborone, because the non-revenue water mainly is influenced by the network. So the condition for the network within Gaborone is better than in other areas. So Gaborone actually, compared to other areas, is doing very well in non-revenue water, which is one of the areas which has less than 15% in non-revenue water, mainly due to the reasonably good condition of the distribution network.
Excellent. So let's just take 2 more questions, and then we can get back to the questions after the other presentations. So the first one is, how does Botswana's SDG numbers compare to neighbors and other similar countries? And the second one is it possible to spatially disaggregate the results of the water accounts? This might be related to regionalization of the accounts that you mentioned. More spatially explicit info from the water accounts is something that South Africa has been identified that would be useful. And to link it to areas of high water sources, management of ecosystems, where water demands are, and so on. This question was from Amit Ginsberg of South Africa. Pula, please.
Okay, thank you. With respect to, I'll speak specifically to SDG 6, because our other colleagues can talk to the other, but with respect to SDG 6, our countries, Botswana is deemed to be doing well, because with respect to SDG 6.1, with access to clean water, we are ranging around 98%, which is really good. For SDG 6.2, for sanitation, that's one area where we are not doing well, where we are, for SDGs, for sanitation, access to improved sanitation, we are currently at 64%. But for potable water, we are doing reasonably well at 98%. I think that's within the region, we should be among those countries which are doing very well. For spatial disaggregation of the results of the water accounts, yeah, it is possible. And if we look at our reports, from since 2016 onwards, we've been now showing maps which show the spatial disaggregation of the accounts on how much is being consumed across the country, focusing on specific regions. We use management centers because the water service provider uses management center. There are about 60 management centers, and we're able to disaggregate and spatially display the use of water within those management centers. We also be able to disaggregate and show also the abstraction of water from the environment within those management centers. And we've put in something extra there because we've also did a study on actual evapotranspiration. So we try to look at that and also compare it with the distribution of our dams and see how, because losses of water due to evapotranspiration are huge for us in Botswana due to our high temperatures and also the dryness. So we do have the spatial disaggregation. One thing that we are pursuing now is to have a more remote sensing approach, especially looking at the soil moisture. That's one area where we are still pursuing to spatially display the use of water within the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Puli. Thank you so much. And again, just for to make sure that we manage time, please, Mr. Puli, you can again look at some of the questions asked within the Q&A and also the chat box, and you can try to type the answers to the questions as we continue with the next presentation. So the next presenter is Miss Anne. Miss Anne will present on the energy accounts. So Ms. Anna will focus on some of the key policy messages from the energy account that was done in Botswana, linkage to energy policy and other sectors strategies, and also look at how the energy account is responding to SDG 7 applications. Ms. Anne, you have 12 minutes and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Peter. And let me take this time to say hi, everybody. Yes, I'll start my presentation. And just like you have been doing with Mr. Okopesa, I hope you'll be passing on the slides. Can we have the next slide, please? Next slide, please. The contents are like that, background. Then I'll talk about the energy accounts results, just a few of those. Then I'll also speak to some summary of key policy messages, and then linkages to energy policy and other strategies, and then the SDG 7 applications, and then the way forward. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I haven't gone deeper in the background like Mr. Okopesa said it, but our accounts cover the period from 2010-11 to 2017-18. And when I joined the department in 2016, I found that the first cycle of the accounts had already been completed, which were done with the assistance of the World Bank. And those accounts covered the period 2010-11 to 2014-15. And after the end of the assistance in 2016, the department went on ahead to do the 15-16 accounts. And then we have been working on the 16-17, 17-18. We're about to produce the report from those. And parallel to that, we are also working on the 17-18 and 18-19. And the idea is just to make the accounts as current as possible. And the accounts, the energy accounts cover only coal and electricity. And the main providers of our data are Mopile Coal Mine and Botswana Power Corporation. But we also get data from Statistics Botswana that will be on your GDP and other areas. To date, we have produced only 2 technical reports and 2 policy briefs, and those have been shared with the stakeholders. And like I've already said, we are working on 18-19 and 19-20 accounts. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'll share a very few results, which I thought are very, very important. And this is about the electricity generation and imports, and that covers 2010 to 17-18. As you can see from the screen, our production or electricity generation, if you look at 2010, 2011, 12, you can see that we are producing very little electricity, but then the production has gone very, very high. And that came about because during NDP 10, the country decided to depart from self-reliance on least cost imported energy to self-sufficiency. That was because at the time there was power shortage in the region, and because of that stance or that position, this is when we started seeing electricity generation or local electricity generation rising very sharply and surpassing electricity imports around 2013-14. There's an error there. I corrected some few things in my presentation this side. So I think that there'll still be those errors there. But we see the generation surpassing the imports around 2013-14, not 12-13. And to date, if we look at the proportion of imports to total electricity supply. During 2010-2011, the proportion stood at 87%. We were having 87% of imports, but then right now, 17-18, the proportion stands at 20.3%. Next slide, please. This one talks to electricity consumption by sector. And here we have only captured the results for 15-16 to 17-18. But then just talking from way back on the accounts, the two major consuming sectors have been the mining sector and the household sector. Even as we speak, these are still the main sectors. But then what happened during 2016, 17, and 17, 18 was that we saw now the household sector surpassing the consumption of the household sector, surpassing that of the mining sector. And that was because one of the big mines, the copper nickel mine, it shut down. It was shut down. And this is why now this 2 years, last 2 years, 16, 17, 17, 18, we now see the household sector consumption surpassing that of the mining sector. Next slide, please. And then we also picked this slide because we thought it's very, very important just to share with the audience. This one talks to sectoral shares of electricity use, comparing it to value addition, this addition to our GDP. I'll pick just two important ones. If you look at the mining and perhaps the trade, hotels and restaurants, which is THR, you can see from the bars that with the mining sector, the value added, which is the blue bar, is lower than the electricity use bar. And if you look at the trade, hotels and restaurants, THR, you can see that the opposite is true. You have the value addition very high, and then you have electricity use very, very, very low. And what we want to say from this slide is that this scenario, it actually provides a window. If the country has to diversify the economy, the country has to now promote the services sector. It's not just the trade, hotels. You can even see that even the transport and communications, even the financial and business services, we have a situation whereby the value addition to the economy is higher than their use of electricity. And we are just saying that that being the case, besides diversifying the economy within the services sectors, energy efficiency measures can also be considered within the services sectors. Next slide, please. And the next important slide, which we thought is very, very important, is the slide on the trend in CO2 emissions. And we picked it up because most of our electricity is generated from coal. More than 90%, really, like 99%. Electricity is generated from diesel. So we thought this is very, very, very important because this is where you get most of the CO2. And if you looked very deeply at the first slide where we talked about production, you can see that the trend or the graph where we have maybe we look at the from coal powered plants, you can see that the pattern is following pattern of electricity production. And this is because, like I said, most of the thermal electricity generated from, most of the electricity is generated from thermal coal. And this is why our emissions follow like the very same, the pattern of electricity generated. And if we look at the last 2 years, 16, 17, and 17, 18, total emissions stood at 3,233,941 tons of CO2 equivalent. That's during 16, 17, and increased by 3.4% to 3,344,534 tons of CO2 equivalent. And like I said, if one is to look at the electricity generation cap, you will see that even during those 2 years, we had that increase. Again, you can see that in this emission curve that 2015-16, we had a dip, like emissions went down. It was not because of any measures which were put in place, but it's just because even electricity production went down. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now we come to summary of key policy messages. The highlighted or bold sections in this slide is what we picked from the messages and even from the policy paper. It says the period 2010-11 to 2015-16 was a transition period towards greater electricity self-sufficiency. There was a rapid increase in local production and a rapid in imports. But then what if we remember the first slide on results is that although the production or the production of electricity was rising that much, it wasn't that smooth. It was going up and down, and that was because one of the bigger power plants, nuclear power A, it was closed because of some technical problems. And then from 2013 or so, we have been using one big plant, nuclear B, but it has also been experiencing some technical problems, and then this transition has been very, very volatile, although we managed to increase the local production. And what then one says here is that for the country to continue achieving self-sufficiency, even becoming a net exporter, the important thing would be to rehabilitate our power plants. Murupule A has been off, but now it is back on stream. But Murupule B, which is the major power plant now, is undergoing some refurbishment. And the other thing that we want to say is that the contribution of renewables to the energy mix remains insignificant. And the figure that we have reflected here, which is 0.01%, is picked from the accounts or what the accounts are tracking. We have a Pakalane 1.3 megawatt plant, which compared to the electricity from BPC is very, 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 very small. And this is the electricity or the contribution that we are measuring in the accounts. The solar is used here and there, but really we haven't gone out to measure that yet. But even then, if one was to use that figure, is about 2%. So what is the country should do is to radically increase the contribution of renewables. And if this is done, then SDG 7.2 will be addressed, and then the increase in contribution of renewables will also address the environmental impact issue, and also will be looking at it will be addressing the Paris Agreement. And also, if we increase the contribution of renewables as a country, we will be addressing to some extent the mandate of the ministry, which talks to green technology and energy security. The next key policy message is like repetition, because I've mentioned that in the result, is that the mining and household sectors are the main electricity users, and they need to be targeted for energy conservation initiatives. And this will be in line with SDG 7.3, and it could also address the fact that energy expenditure makes a significant component of this budget. We intend to go a little bit further to conduct a household or an energy use survey, and we hope that with this survey we will be able to identify the most consuming activities, and which then the energy saving measures could be targeted towards. Next slide, please. Next slide. The other policy, key policy message. Can we go back a bit? The previous slide. Yes. The next key policy message that we have derived from the accounts is that because of the rapid increase in CO2 emission, this is an environmental cost and concern. So what we are saying as an advice also to policy is that we have to reduce or avoid CO2 emissions. And that means that it can only be done through a high penetration of renewables, especially in electricity generation. It could be done through increasing energy efficiency measures within the most energy consuming areas, like in the mining and households. And lastly, we can avoid or reduce CO2 emissions if we switch fuels. For example, we have a power station, it's a diesel power station that currently uses diesel, but it also has the option of using CBM, but currently we are just using a diesel. So as and when we have a CBM, we will switch, or the intends to switch to CBM. So these are the three things which can help the country reduce levels of CO2 emissions. Now, I also talked about the last one is the mining sector uses more electricity than its share in GDP, which is the opposite case for the services sectors. And from as far back as I can recall, Botswana has been reliant on the mining sector. And so now what we see is that the services sector is coming up, and therefore that's why we are saying this is an opportunity for economic diversification to promote the services. Next slide, please. This one talks to the linkage to national energy policy. The energy accounts drive the policy development around 4 main areas. The intention is to avail timely, relevant, and reliable energy data that will be used for planning and management of energy supply and demand. And the accounts also have to identify high intensity or poor performing sectors by monitoring changes in energy intensities for purposes of energy efficiency improvement. The accounts also aim at taking the availability and use of different energy sources to inform formulation of policy around diversity in energy supply and improvement in energy security. Another linkage, or what the accounts are supposed to do, is emissions, especially CO2, like what we have already talked about, and so that the policy tries to come up with some strategies or which can be used to reduce such and manage environmental impacts. Next slide, please. Next slide. This also talks again to linkages to NEP and SDG 7 applications. What I have done here is the 3 points. I have bolded some statements, and these statements are actually policy objectives we picked, which are in the policy objective. We just put them here, and then beneath each we have said exactly what we are doing in connection with that policy objective. The first one is improve energy efficiency and demand management in all sectors. That's another error there, or we'll correct that. And what we are doing currently as within the accounts is we are only focusing on the mining sector. This is where we are trying to do energy efficiency or taking the energy intensity. And we are planning as a way forward to disaggregate some of the economic sectors and then calculate the respective energy intensities. And here we are just saying this activity is linked to both the NEP, as you can see the objective above, and it's also speaking to the SDG 7.3. I hope you are aware that SDG 7.3 talks about improving the energy efficiency. Then the second one is the minimizing energy-related impacts on the environment. There's also an objective from the National Energy Policy, and we have already discussed in the past slides that the energy accounts are calculating CO2 emissions, but we are doing this at sector level, and it's only within the electricity sector. As and when the accounts are expanded to other energy commodities, when we will be doing CO2 emissions at the national level. And then the third linkage is increasing the share of new and renewable sources of energy in the energy supply mix. I've already mentioned the Pakaran 1.3 megawatt solar station. This is the one that the energy infrastructure has. And this is why earlier on I said the contribution of solar seems to be very, very, very low, because we're only measuring the contribution of this very plant. But right now we have just finalized the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan. This is for electricity for the period 2020, is 2020, 2040. And here the IRP actually is talking about the demand of the country for the next 20 years, and it also links them to the resources needed so that the country meets that demand. And we have about 7 projects in there, and which 5 of them are renewable related. The 2 are coal and CBM, and we are saying, because already in the energy account infrastructure, because we already have the 1.3 megawatt, what we are going to do when these projects are implemented, they are going to be slotted in the infrastructure, and we'll be able to then to continue measuring the contribution of renewables and also monitoring the same. And so this particular activity addresses the NEP as well as the SDG 7.2 that talks about increasing the contribution of renewable in the energy. Next slide, please. Next slide. The energy accounts are also linked, or they also support other strategies like the renewable energy efficiency, the renewable strategy, and the energy efficiency and conservation strategy. But we also support the integrated resource plan. And these are just general statements, especially the first one, to say that with the accounts, because that is basically statistics, we are expected to avail timely data, relevant and very, very reliable data. And this is especially, like say, for the integrated resource plan, when it undergoes reviews. It was just approved last year, so I think the next review will be in the next 2 or 3 years. And this is why we're also trying to push the accounts for them to be very, very up to date, so that as and when the review of the IRP comes on board, we'll be in a position to provide them with current data. And although this I mentioned earlier, the way we support or are linked to the renewable strategy is that, although little as it is, we have captured the Pakal 1.3 megawatt in the energy accounts infrastructure. But like I said, the projects which are coming, this platform, which we have already created, will be able to bring them on board, and we'll be able to be very much linked to or report or monitor all the projects under the renewable strategy. Even the energy efficiency and conservation strategy, we are still doing just a little, like we said, in the mining sector, but we already have plans ongoing that we look at other economic sectors, we disintegrate those, and then we then measure the IEs of those economic sectors. And then that means we'll be able to really cover a broader area when it comes to energy. Next slide, please. What we intend to do, there are a lot of things really which we still need to do within the energy accounts, but here we have picked the very, very, very crucial activities, just two of them. And these activities, we hope or know that if we do them, the existing gaps within the energy accounts will be able to fill them. And these are the gaps that, when filled up or done, will be able to, the accounts will be able to enable the accounts to fully drive the policy development and track the progress of SDG 7. The one very crucial activity that has been on our table, but for 1 or 2 reasons have been failing here and there, we want to conduct a national energy use survey, what we call NEWS. And this survey, if I can just share with you some information, is that we tried to conduct it in 2019, but then we had some serious problems, and so we had to stop midway. And we were intending to do it last year and even this year, but because it's a survey and a national one for that matter, it cannot go through because of the current COVID-19 pandemic. So we are still on hold, but as and when the COVID pandemic goes down, we are hopeful, or this is the project that we will do, because when we have done it, we will be able to expand energy accounts to cover like petroleum products, cover renewables and other renewable sources. And we will be able to avail relevant current data on all energy sources. You can see right now our accounts are just on coal and electricity. And once we do that, the survey will be able to identify the most consuming activities within the mining and household sectors as candidates for energy saving measures. So even though we have already mentioned this to our energy efficiency section, although we have already advised them to look at the mining and household sector, it's kind of very broad. They don't know exactly what to do. So we're just thinking that, planning that once we do the survey, we'll be able to point to those critical consuming activities, whether it be space heating or water heating or whatever. And then that means the energy measures will be directed to those areas. The other thing that we really need within the energy account section is capacity building, especially in the area of generating energy indicators. Those like missions, like your energy efficiency and all that. We need to be trained on those, because although we have an infrastructure that generates those, now and then you have to be in a position to interpret those indicators. Why is my IE now very low? Why is this happening now? We have to really be in a position to interpret same, and also to link the indicators to policy and other national issues of importance. This the department looks at the very two main issues which should be done in order for the account to be able to satisfactorily drive policy development and track SDG. I think this is the last slide. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. And this is a wonderful work that has been done on the energy account. There's a lot of interest, a lot of very good information. And again, we were seeing the trends that in Botswana, the accounts are directly informing the national policies and the development process as it unveils in Botswana. This is very exciting. I think time is very limited, but Sophia, could you please maybe go direct to the next presentation, because I think after this presentation, we will have a direct question and answer that Sophia will manage. So I think we'll answer some of the questions, and we highly encourage Anne to start answering some of the questions in the Q&A, so that we can, because we have a lot of traffic there. So please go there and try to answer some of them. So without taking much more time, let's try now to go to the next presenter so that we can manage time. Mr. Edwin, the floor is yours. Mr. Edwin is going to present on the macro physical indicators of sustainable development in Botswana. Edwin, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody. As a way of background information before my introduction, let me clear the myth there, Peter. We at the Ministry of Finance are responsible, or we are wearing two hats. Actually, we are responsible for coordination of NCA country level through facilitating function of institutional structures responsible for NCA implementation in a country, like a steering committee. Other role that we do involves implementation, specifically we are compiling and analyzing macroeconomic indicators of sustainable development, which I will focus my presentation on. As a way of introduction, next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry that there's a little bit of a delay, so when I click, it takes a little bit of time before you see it. Here you go.
Let's rush through the presentation because of time constraints. Yes, as a way of introduction, macroeconomic indicators of sustainable development are economic indicators that have been adjusted to take into account the environmental impact of economic activity. This impact includes the depletion of natural resources, degradation, pollution, and others, which are not captured in the conventional system of national accounts or SNA. In order to account for this, the system of environmental economic accounting, or SEA for short, framework is used to derive the macroeconomic measures of sustainability. Next slide, please. I think I'm a bit faster than you, Sophie. There are a little bit of some delays. I'm ahead of you. Yes, the slide on adjusted macroeconomic indicators. Well, they are basically we basically focus on the comparison of data accounts, which measure the wealth of a particular nation over time, or just an estimate of that total wealth in the country. And it recognizes diverse assets which contribute to any nation's wealth. Basically, it identifies 5 asset classes. I'll go into detail later on that. We have also the adjusted net national savings or GNN savings, and economic theory posits that, you know, when this positive savings consistently or a country consistently show positive savings, show that social welfare is increasing. Whereas when a country experiences consistent negative savings, national savings, that is an indication that an economy is on an unsustainable path. We also use adjusted net national income, which we compile, and this specifically measures the available income in the economy, which can be consumed or invested to increase future consumption. These are the key indicators that we compile using SEA as an initiative from World Bank. I know there are other indicators of sustainable development, but we focus on this ones that I have outlined. Next slide, please. Well, in the next slide, you will see the graph on comprehensive wealth. And like I said earlier, comprehensive wealth is made up of 4 asset classes, 5 exactly. We have what you call natural capital. We have what is called, which is the focus of NCA, of course. Basically, we have produce capital, we have financial capital, we have human capital, and social capital. Comprehensive wealth shows that the total wealth has been on an upward trend in Botswana since 2005. Natural capital in Botswana used to be the main contributor to the country's wealth. As you know, our country is resource-based. Initially, when we, especially diamonds, have been contributing a lot to our economic progress and socio-economic development. And natural capital was surpassed by produce capital from 2009, as you can see in the graph. Produce capital accounts for a larger, produce capital accounts for a larger share of total wealth, followed by natural capital. Financial capital accounts for a smaller share of total wealth. Any depletion of natural capital must be compensated by building up other forms of wealth, which our country has been doing. We have been, investing proceeds from our mineral revenues, investing into other forms of capital, like human capital, financial assets, and produce capital or manufactured assets, like building of roads, schools, hospitals, etc. Next slide, please. Our focus on adjusted macroeconomic indicators here, specifically ANNI, which is the adjusted net national income. As you can see in that graph, I was just trying to show the ANNI growth and compare it to the gross national income growth. And the diagram shows that growth in ANNI was lower than the growth in GNNI, which implies that growth during that was partly a result of resource depletion, mainly mining, of course. Next slide. Now, linkages to, adjusted net national savings. Adjusted net national savings is positive, as shown by the graph, which shows an upward increase, implying that the country has been accumulating assets over the reference period from 2010 up to 2018. It has been building up its wealth, investing revenues from mineral resources, especially diamonds. And the country, as shown by the graph, the ANNS is on a sustainable path, sustainable socio-economic development path. Now, next slide, please. Yes, linkage to macroeconomic and fiscal policy. Well, the wealth accounts in particular really are very key in providing the necessary policy guidance in areas such as, or to answer questions such as how much to invest and how much to consume. Look at the fiscal rule, which our country has been implementing, how to manage financial assets, for instance, information on the they can give data which can be very critical for advising on our financial assets, how we have been investing on that, and how to divide between our investments between the types of assets. That is the composition of wealth, how this have been growing over time, looking at the financial, the physical capital, and the human capital. It is the wealth accounts can give a trend analysis of how these assets have been growing over time in the country. Now, if we are to address the issue of fiscal rule, the next slide, please. Here, like I said earlier on, I've provided a table which shows the information on revenues, on government total expenditure, and as you can see, recurrent budget, according to the fiscal rule, excluding health and education, the recurrent budget should be fully financed by non-mineral revenue. And according to the fiscal rule, mineral revenues should be used for investment in development expenditure. 60% both physical and human capital, while 40% is supposed to be saved for future generations. Well, achieving the fiscal rule has been very difficult, given, of course, the various factors, such as mainly the limited revenue base and other exogenous factors that impact on especially the volatile nature of mineral revenues. Next slide, please. Well, the recommendations, as a way of recommendations, mineral revenues are finite, they are exhaustible. Therefore, the economy should continue to invest its mineral revenues in other forms of assets. And the second one is that research on return on investment in those assets should be carried out to assess the effectiveness of those investments. And the third point is that there should be continuous investment in produce capital, particularly quality infrastructure. And finally, that economic diversification efforts has to be intensified through the promotion of the non-mining sector to continue to cushion the economy during economic downturns. Most of these recommendations are currently being implemented, of course, through the revised NDP level. And in conclusion, I could just highlight that efforts to diversify the economy should be intensified, and that investment in quality infrastructure and particularly in education remains key for economic sustainability. Thank you, facilitator, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edwin. This is a very informative discussion and presentation on the macroeconomic framework and the key indicators that are related to natural resource management. And I think this is going to be very important in our next few minutes that we have to discuss on how other countries can benefit from this very rich experience from Botswana. So we have very few minutes to go into Q&A. I think, Sophia, I'll give you the floor to moderate the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you to all the presenters. There have been really very rich presentations, very rich data, and you can see that there is enormous amount of interest from all the questions pouring into the chat box or the Q&A. And I believe that all the participants would really hope that the ones that we are not having the time to respond to right now, that you could potentially respond to them and we can share with the participants afterwards. And a lot of them are already answered in writing, so please check that out. There are many questions on the energy accounts and relating to the greenhouse gas emissions and the country's nationally determined contributions. So how are the increasing trends in the CO2 emissions? How are these implications impacting the NDCs, the discussion, and the efforts to reduce emissions moving forward? And has the data been used to inform that discussion? Is it helpful to influence the direction of the NDC? That's the first question. And secondly, many people are asking about why there are not more investments in renewable energy sources like solar and wind, which Botswana should be well placed to have. I think we have part of the answer already in the presentation, but it would be good to have some more elucidation on that. And thirdly, I will stay with these three. The third one, I think, is for both water and energy. So has there been any probing into the interlinkages in the water, energy, food nexus? Have the accounts been used for this, to combine the different type of accounts and inform those type of questions? So please, I first give the floor to Anne to respond to the first two questions. Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I wanted to look at the second question because that's the one I've been answering. I could start with that and then answer the first one.
Sure, that's fine.
It's about the conflict. Where is it?
Yeah, so there was several questions on the NDCs and how the accounts have informed the NDCs and as we work. And the second one was on the policies for renewables like solar and wind. The third one was on the interlinkage. Yeah.
I can't see the second one here, but I was just trying to answer the second one, that the one that talks about the conflict between the emissions and NDCs. I just wanted to say, yes, there seem to be, or there is similarly a conflict, because what is happening now is that the demand for electricity is rising, and with it rising, it means the country has looked at the resources available, and the one abundant resource is coal, really, and I mean, we cannot ignore that one and not use the coal resource. Not that here and there the country is, it's not that we are ignoring the emission levels, because right now the refurbishment of the nuclear power station A, it took into account the equipment that is used to either reduce or lower the CO2 emissions. Besides that, actually, one can just say it's like we'll continue using the coal resource for now. But in our IRP plan, the Integrated Resource Plan, we have about 7 projects that are coming between 2022 and 2027. And there is a 100 megawatt solar PV. There is a 35 megawatt solar PV also. There is a 10 megawatt CBM project. There is a 200 megawatt CSP project. There is also a 50 megawatt wind that will be implemented by 2027. There is also a 100 megawatt solar PV that will be implemented around 2027. But there is also a 300 megawatts coal that will be implemented around 2026. So you can see that within the IRP, we have brought in various or many renewable projects. It's only that they will be implemented between 2022 and 2027. But as you can see, coal is still there because really with the growing demand, for now, we cannot do without coal. I think I can stop there for that one.
Thank you so much. I would also like to ask Mr. Pule if you have something to add on the question on interlinkages in the energy, water, food nexus. If the accounts you have been using the accounts to inform that.
Hello again. Unfortunately, at the moment, not yet. We've not yet done the linkage for the water, energy, food nexus. Maybe for future work, it's something that is worth considering. Because ideally, as a country, we are looking at a time where we'll be able to produce just a full NCA report, which covers all the accounts. So we are pursuing those linkages in the distant future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lastly, I would just like to pose a question to Edwin. What do you think for all the other countries that are starting up or have just started a journey on NCA? What would you say? What was the most important thing for Botswana to really succeed in institutionalizing the accounts and continue even after external funding ceased? What's the key to your success?
Hello, thank you, Sophia, for the question. Well, there are always challenges, especially when you start a new initiative, and especially when you're talking about challenges to broader NCA implementation. And of course, we went through some challenges, but the factors that contributed to successful implementation of SIA in the country, one is that already we had the data available through our national statistical offices and in some cases in our line ministries, which was needed for the compilation of the initial accounts, and that was a positive, of course, and secondly, that it is important that SIA implementation should be backed by political buy-in in order to ensure that the accounts are used, especially for policy.
Whoops, we lost you there. Edwin? Oh.
We lost Edwin.
Yeah, I think so. So, hello?
Institutionalization of the accounts. Hello?
Yeah. Yes, we could hear you now.
Yes, and more broadly, well, promoting the entire, communicating the initiative in the entire government structures was very critical to sensitize the policymakers responsible, especially for the initial natural resources that were prioritized. It was important that this initiative was promoted and advocated to facilitate SIA implementation and ensure that the accounts and the institutionalization structures are put in place, and to give support to the staff responsible for or dedicated to compiling those accounts. In some cases, we have the staff already there doing similar work, but of course we had to work use them to refocus their work, to use SIA, and through training provided by World Bank, we managed to build that capacity in the initial phase, and that's why even after World Bank support, the institutionalization was very smoothly carried out through that support for top management. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edwin. Yeah, that's very useful. So we have already gone over time. Maybe we should make these webinars longer because there's always so much interest. But for now, we will close the meeting. So I give the floor back to Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophia. It's been a very, very rewarding presentation, though we're constrained with time. I want to thank the presenters, Mr. Gupotse, Mrs. Ann, Edwin. Big congratulations to Edwin on his recent elevation as the steering committee, as the chair for the steering committee for the Africa NCA Committee of Practice. The presentations were very, very good, straight to the point. And I like the statistics that came from them. And they are really good inputs to viable decision-making, especially on the policy side. I want to thank you too, Sophia, thank Paul, and at the same time inform everybody that our next webinar will be Thursday, 27th of March, same time, and it will be a presentation on ecosystem accounting for Liberia, and this presentation will be done by Conservation International. I want to use this opportunity to thank all the participants that created time to join this webinar. It's not been easy. We started with 67 and we're about 58 now. I want to thank you. And I want to use this opportunity to revert back to my name. As you are all aware, when we started this webinar, I suspended my name. I said, no, though my name is Africa, I will not compete with the continent for this webinar. So I decided to use my father's name, Samuel. Now, at the end of this webinar, I'm going back to my name. My name returns back to Africa Olujoba. And I thank everybody again. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Africa. Thank you so much, all. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.